Welcome to First. I'm Shirley Min along with Mark Eichman and Nichelle Polston. Habitat for Humanity homes have been built the same way for years, but changes are in the works. We'll explain why this week.
The lasting image of this past football season just might be the impact of the Ray Rice domestic abuse case on dealing with the problem and whether the NFL has learned about what to do in the future.
It is the weekend for love, so why not say it with flowers? Lots of flowers. It's a lovely experience from Longwood Gardens. First, your public media news magazine starts now.
Many of you know about Habitat for Humanity and its mission to put those in need in quality homes. To date, the Newcastle County chapter has helped put families in more than 200 homes, yet the demand remains. And to meet that demand, the nonprofit is trying something new. I explain in this week's First Look. The way it works, once you've qualified for a Habitat for Humanity of Newcastle County home, you're required to put in 250 hours of sweat equity to help build your home. But CEO Kevin Smith says the nonprofit is adding another tool to its arsenal: prefabricated modular homes, particularly for Habitat homes in the county.
We will always be a volunteer organization. We'll use volunteers to build our houses because that's part of who we are. But we're just trying to be as efficient with the dollars that we have to build the most houses.
Habitat has built 22 homes in Middletown, which is sometimes an hour from its Wilmington headquarters. Smith says given its location, investing in modular homes there is more cost efficient for the nonprofit from a staffing standpoint.
One of the misnomers about Habitat is so you're building houses with volunteers, and so you're saving money that way. And that's partially true. What the people don't understand is when you've got a volunteer coordinator, you've got a site supervisor and some assistants on staff, that overhead to manage all those volunteers almost equals that savings that they're providing.
According to Smith, it can cost upwards of $165,000 to build a Habitat townhome from scratch. Roughly $15,000 to buy the land, maybe a house, $60,000 for materials, $50,000 on the foundation and to pay subcontractors to hook up things like plumbing and heating, another $25,000 to pay Habitat staff, and the rest covers any unexpected or miscellaneous costs.
Adding the modular piece to our overall construction skill set allows us to maximize every dollar that comes into our organization and to stretch it.
Habitat's Director of Construction, Mike Sinizin, says each prefab home is projected to save Habitat anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000.
Every dollar that comes into our organization is one that's been donated to us. And so we have a responsibility to be good stewards over the resources that have been entrusted to us.
Through a competitive bid process, Sussex County-based Berica Homes won the contract. The modular home builder is creating 3 homes for Habitat to start.
I know a lot of their methodology is to use a lot of on-site labor by volunteers and things like that. But I was excited about it because the process of building a modular home, I think, can assist them in doing it faster and better and cheaper.
Generally, Collison says people think modular homes are trailer homes. So he took me on a tour of his Greenwood plant where all of Berica's homes are built.
We term our construction process off-site stick-built. Built to the same local building codes as any residential or commercial builder would build to. We just do it in a different way.
Shielded from the elements, homes are framed, insulated, shingled, and weatherproofed in a matter of weeks inside the plant.
We deliver it to the job site, and we set it in between 3 and 8 hours.
But if Berica's doing all of the heavy lifting, literally, then how will Habitat's homeowners work off their sweat equity?
That was one of the challenges that we had to overcome in adding this piece to our construction arsenal. As it turns out, the requirement for our homeowners is that they provide 250 hours worth of sweat equity in the building, ideally of their home, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Once the home is delivered, Sinizin says there's still about 2 months worth of work that needs to be done on site to make the house pretty. And homeowners, he says, can work off the rest of their hours on other Habitat projects.
Habitat will never lose its need for volunteers or the piece of involving our homeowners in the construction process.
This 1,456 square foot ranch is Habitat's very first modular home. Once it's delivered to Newark, African immigrant Mwape Taipam will move in.
I know he's very excited about this new opportunity and what it means for his family.
Smith tells me Mwape's home is finished and delivery is expected to happen in the next couple of months. Mwape's also already worked off all of his sweat equity hours. For him and his wife, we're talking 375 hours in about 7 or 8 months, which is, Nichelle, unheard of in Habitat history.
Just curious, Shirley, tell me how many homes or how many prefab homes will Baraka build for Habitat each year?
Ideally, Habitat wants to build 4 to 5 modular homes a year, but because these are the first modular builds, the nonprofit really needs to look at the cost savings and how they compare with preliminary projections. But I know Baraka is interested in a long-term partnership with the nonprofit.
And where are they going? Are any in the city of Wilmington?
So we have the ranch that's going in Newark. 2 duplexes are going in Middletown. A good deal of space is needed to set the home, so we're talking cranes and set crews. Habitat, they don't want to have to close off any city streets, but that being said, the director of construction with Habitat has not ruled out any prefab homes going within city limits.
Okay, well, thanks, Shirley. As always, you can find this story and all of your Delaware news at newsworks.org/Delaware.
Coming up, PBS documents the Italian-American experience. First introduces you to 2 people who talk about their Italian roots. And then we have a floral experience. First is at Longwood Gardens, and it is covered in orchids.
That is the cartoon head of Rob Torno. And of course, we have the real deal in the studio. Rob, thanks for joining us.
No sweat.
There is a showdown happening between the Christina School District and the Delaware Department of Education. Tell me about your cartoon.
So I wanted to do a cartoon about this conflict, which is basically about the priority schools in Wilmington. There's 6. Christina has 3 within their district, and it's a big point of contention right now between the Department of Education and Markel and the district. But there's so many intertwining issues that I don't really know which side I'm on, really. So I just kind of want to look from it from the perspective of the kids, you know. There's these big problems and everyone's arguing, yet these kids are still going to school, their parents are still trying to help them. It's just, there's got to be a better way to deal with this than to have all of this infighting that's very, very public and very, you know, boisterous.
Speaking of the children, the kid in the middle seems like she sets the tone.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you know, because you imagine going to school and having all this stuff over your head and, you know, your schools might close, you might have to go to a different school, you might have new instructors. I mean, it's just very, very contentious. And I feel like there's just a better way they could be handling it.
Well, let's go back in time. Last week on Newsworks, you presented a cartoon. It gave us a bit of a... It showed us the roadways.
Right,
You think there needs to be an increase on roads?
Yeah, I think the gas tax, the last time it was raised in Delaware was 1995, you know, 20 years ago. And back then, gas was $1 a gallon. Not only are we driving more fuel-efficient cars, it's just such a less of a percentage of that money going to roads. It's no wonder we can't fund our projects. So if we can swallow $1 more last year than now, I think we can swallow like a 10-cent increase and allow that to help fix our crumbling infrastructure.
Yeah, I wish my car was more efficient. I think I need a Prius. But thanks so much, Rob, for joining us. You can check out his work on newsworks.org/Delaware. And, of course, follow him on Twitter at Rob Torno.
On February 17th, WHYY-TV will show a 4-hour PBS special entitled The Italian Americans. The program focuses on the impact Italian immigrants have had on this country, both good and bad. It showcases the Italian lifestyle and the way many people of Italian descent are looking at that lifestyle. They want to know more about their roots and perhaps find a way they could live a long life.
Over the first 2 decades of the 20th century, 3 million Southern Italian immigrants passed through the gates of Ellis Island, anxious to find work in America's booming economy.
The program traces 150 years of Italian immigration history, how beginning in the 1880s, Italian men would leave villages in Italy to board ships and endure a grueling trip to get to this country. They didn't know the language and were put to work building much of the big city infrastructure that brought the United States into the 20th century.
In time, they sent for their wives and children, and together, as families, they forged ahead, starting new lives as Italian Americans.
As the program moves into the 21st century, it traces how the Italian immigration story brings a renewed sense of self.
Today, many Italian Americans are seeking a connection to their family's past, traveling back to Italy to fully understand where they came from.
My students in my Italian class, they were very excited to take this language. When they chose this language was because they had an Italian background.
The next generation of that enthusiasm can be found in Samantha DiVirgilio. She will be taking Italian next year as a Padua Academy freshman. She wants to visit Italy someday.
My family wants to take a big vacation there, but they said we'll wait till we can learn a little before we go.
She knows her great-grandparents came through New York and ended up in Delaware in 1906. She knows they came from the village of Olivano, Delaware's sister city in Italy. One of her relatives was a welder. Several of them helped build St. Anthony's of Padua, where she goes to school.
My great-grandfather on my pop-up side came, and he met my grandmother in New York. And on my mom's side, my great-great-grandfather came.
Her family plays a big part in organizing the Italian Festival, Wilmington's annual Italian block party. She doesn't know the whole story of her family's early life in America, but she would like to know more.
You need to know where you came from and what you really are, because even though you're American, you need to know not everybody is just American. You're also Italian, Spanish, Irish. It's all different. You just need to continue the traditions.
We're from Sicily, actually a very, very small town named Graniti. It's right outside Taormina, right on the beautiful, beautiful sea.
Melissa Canavo Marino knows more about her Italian heritage than most people. She grew up in a close-knit Italian neighborhood in Swedesboro, New Jersey. She tries to bring that sense of Italian community to her weekly Wilmington radio show that she started in 2013.
Buongiorno a tutti e bentornati a Mattinata Musicale, solo su Delaware's News Radio 1450 WILM. Oggi abbiamo uno show fantastico.
Marino does the show from her home. People can listen online. She picks the music and says the show is more than just a labor of love.
It's just a way for us to give back to the community and say, you know, we know you're there, we know we're trying to do something to make you happy to be Italian.
Marino is a fourth-generation Italian-American. She spent time studying and living in Italy. The first generation arrived here in the 1920s. Her love for Italy comes from her father. His first language was Italian, taught to him by the grandparents who raised him.
I'm proud to be American, but I'm just as proud to be Italian, and I'm thankful that I had that opportunity to grow up that way and not lose my heritage.
In the PBS program, that heritage is highlighted in Rosetta, Pennsylvania, a small, close-knit Italian community where a health study was done 40 years ago that looked at the way people lived and the things they ate. There is an Italian secret in the food.
Spaghetti is not the best thing for you all the time, you know. But I tell you, if I'm going to go with a meatball in my mouth.
The PBS special on Italian Americans will air in two parts. The first part airs from 9 to 11 p.m. on Tuesday, February 17th. The second part is February 24th. Melissa Marino's Italian program runs on WILM Radio Sundays at 8 a.m.
First can be found online at WHYY.org/first. This show, along with all of our past shows, are there. Surf around, check out other great WHYY programs as well.
Most football fans are still buzzing about that final play by Seattle in the Super Bowl. The biggest buzz during the football season was the fallout from the Ray Rice fiasco.
Not my problem.
No more. I'll say something next time.
No more. Why didn't she tell anyone?
No more. Why doesn't she just leave?
No more excuses. No more.
The No More campaign against domestic violence is one impact in heightening the awareness needed to combat violence against women. It's made an impact on those who work on the front lines who also want to focus on the healing.
I was teaching my children what love looked like. I didn't give a very good example, let's say.
Maxine, who doesn't wish to reveal her identity, makes it a point now to talk about her past and experience with domestic violence.
That was my pattern. I always seemed to have abusive relationships, like one after another after another. And my last marriage lasted for 10 years, and it was extremely controlling.
Maxine eventually gained the strength to walk away from the abuse, remarry, and join the group Weaver, Women Empowered Against Violence in Every Relationship. But recent news of an Alabama judge who beat his wife, as well as the release of video footage showing NFL player Ray Rice physically attack his partner in an elevator, is proof to Maxine that domestic violence continues to be an issue where greater public awareness is necessary.
It's very upsetting. I've been following it closely. It's very upsetting.
What's even more upsetting is when people are unsure about holding public figures accountable.
That's an interesting question. I was talking to my dental hygienist recently, and she said, all I want to know is, can they make the basket and can they make the field goal, you know? And I thought that was an interesting perspective.
The issue certainly hits close to home in the first state. In 2012, Delaware had 8 domestic violence homicides. 1 was a domestic violence suicide. Recent years, the number hit as high as 14.
Domestic violence, as it is all over the country, is a really big problem here in Delaware. You know, from the 4,000 hotline calls that our shelter hotlines get every year on average, to the thousands of criminal incidents that involve intimate partner violence. It's a huge issue.
When it comes to domestic violence, Post says it's rooted in behaviors that include jealousy, distrust, and possessiveness.
Certainly that can happen for both men and women, that kind of behavior exhibits. It's not a healthy way to have a relationship.
Also, according to Post, the CDC conducted a national survey that revealed 1 in 4 women will experience domestic or sexual violence in their lifetime. Delaware is even part of other studies and surveys that go into schools to look at different kinds of experiences that kids have. Studies show that Delaware middle school and high school girls will experience domestic violence or witness it.
You may not know that you know a survivor of domestic violence, but you do. And it's really important for everyone to think of it as something that they can do something about.
As for Maxine, she urges everyone to pay attention to the signs of abuse, not because of the latest media attention, but because often such relationships can appear to be too good to be true.
I did receive more flowers in that relationship than you could even imagine, you know, but what was that about? You know, I think about that now. Was that about convincing me that it was wonderful?
According to the Delaware Coalition Against Domestic Violence, it's everyone's responsibility to be courageous bystanders and not let people make sexist remarks about folks or disrespectful remarks about their partners. Those seeking help from domestic violence can call 302-762-6110 or 302-422-8058. Callers will remain anonymous.
State of Play time. Stephanie Hansen, former Newcastle County president, now with the law firm of Young, Conaway, Stargett and Taylor, is here, and so is Michael Stafford. He's also a Wilmington attorney, columnist, and MSNBC contributor. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Glad to
Good
have
to see you.
back. You know, we all work in Wilmington. We come to the city every day. The mayor of Wilmington, Dennis Williams, has launched all of these crime-fighting initiatives. You know, we have Cure Violence, Operation Disrupt, all these names to go with adding more police on the streets. Do you feel like we're on the right track?
I work right on Rodney Square, and I've had an occasion to talk to a lot of people that have worked there for a long time. And I think what I'm hearing back is that over the past couple of years or so, they have seen a decrease in things like panhandling and in loitering that before was actually keeping people in their office. I mean, I know even personally myself, I used to spend a lot more time. I've worked downtown since the early 2000s. 2001 actually, and I at that point would spend more time going to Market Street to have lunch. And then it got to the point where I couldn't go from Rodney Square to a restaurant on Market Street without being panhandled 3 or 4 times. You don't have that problem as much now, and there's been a decrease over just the past couple of years because of that. And I think that contributes a lot to the people's sense of safety.
Well, you know, I mean, Wilmington's really 2 different cities, isn't it? I mean, there's an urban core that is sort of it's like any other city in the first world, and then there's failed state Wilmington, and the neighborhoods where most of the shootings are happening, where most of the violent crime is, those aren't the same areas that people who are commuting into the city are working in. It's not the gentrified areas, you know, it's not the hip neighborhoods. It's Hilltop. It's places where people who work in the city, even for years, we don't venture. We don't walk down those streets. I think the mayor's policing initiatives are a necessary component of the solution. But I think if we diagnose the problem as being an issue of merely of policing and public safety, we're missing the bigger picture. I mean, we are dealing with systemic issues that impact not just our own city, but society more broadly. The loss of jobs, you know, the impact. I mean, poor urban planning. We've got a 95 corridor that cuts through the city like an open wound. And the solution is going to have to be broader than just putting a few more cops on the street and creating a homicide unit. The
perception is that has been created by the article, particularly the whole murder town thing, is causing people to be a lot more on edge and more frightened than they were in the past, without any more basis in their own personal experience. I think he's doing the right thing, and I think he is trying to make a name for himself. And I don't think either of those 2 things are bad. Matt Denn did a wonderful job with the insurance commissioner's office. I mean, he's an effective, good leader, and I'm really glad to see him stepping up to do it. And I don't know why Mayor Williams wasn't there. I think it raises a question as to why, but it certainly doesn't raise a question into my mind as to whether Matt ought to be doing it, because Matt will get it done.
Wilmington's too important economically and culturally for the state, for state elected officials to take a back seat on addressing some of these issues. I mean, Markell hit it in his State of the State address. What happens in Wilmington affects the entire state. My question for the governor is, there's this thing called progressive taxation that we seem to have forgotten about in Delaware. When I look at it, and it's not just the senior tax initiative. It's true with the gas tax, with the water tax, taxes that basically hit all of us the same. There's a vast difference between a senior citizen living in poverty, just getting by, and people who are living in large McMansions, or who are moving here from New Jersey or Pennsylvania or New York, relocating into retirement communities, and then they're going to complain about a couple of $100 added to their property tax bill. Most tax breaks are means tested. Why can't this one be? I think that could be an effective solution.
And a lot of Republicans are saying, look, we got to cut and save money and cut expenses. This would save $12.5 million.
Well, yes, but I don't think realistically taking away the tax break for all seniors is really even on the table. I mean, because you really can't. There is such a difference between the senior that is making a decision between, do I buy groceries this week or do I buy my medication, as opposed to the other folks whose biggest concern, whose big concern is, how can I gift away parts of my estate by the end of this tax year so that I'm giving it to my children rather than having it all go someplace else. So I think that really what this is going to do is it's going to cause a discussion to happen about whether this tax break really ought to be for every senior just based on the fact that they're seniors, or should it be more based on income. Maybe it doesn't make sense at a certain income level and above that they're getting a $250 or $500 tax break a year.
Agreed.
Well, we will see in Dover how all of this unfolds. Thank you so much, Stephanie Hansen and Michael Stafford. State of Play is also on newsworks.org/Delaware. Just look for it in the drop-down box at the top of the page.
Saturday is Valentine's Day, and for First Experience this week, we got you flowers. Orchids, to be exact. What better place to experience them than at Longwood Gardens? With over 5,000 orchids spread across 4 acres, it's a great time of year to get out of the cold and take in these beautiful flowers. Among the many flowers featured in the exhibit are these long-stem butterfly orchids. They were flown in from China for this exhibit, and it's the first time they've ever been displayed in a public garden in the United States. The Orchid Extravaganza exhibit runs through March 29th, so you still have time to see them for yourself, and it's warm in there, so you can warm up. You can find out more when you visit longwoodgardens.org.
Well, next week on First, we have the story behind the making of deer jerky. It's not a food story. Let's just say it involves the influence of Matt Haley in a program inside Delaware's prison.
I think we are getting some samples of that. Well, that is First for this week. We thank you for watching. For Nichelle Polston and Mark Eichman, I'm Shirley Min. Have a great week.